It's time to put together our monthly budget again. I'll show you how I'm planning mine so I don't finish the year in the red. Welcome back to Ready Budget Go. My name is Drew, and on this channel we talk about cash budgeting, saving money, and achieving our financial goals. If that sounds like something you're interested in, please consider subscribing, hitting the like button, and leaving a comment down below. I would love to hear from you. Today, what I want to talk about is putting together my December budget. December is fraught with potential pitfalls as far as budgeting is concerned. We have the holidays, we have kind of the end of year frenzy, and it's also a time of year when, at least for those of us in this part of the country, in the northern hemisphere anyway, the weather tends not to be very good. And so there's a lot of sitting around at home and idly scrolling through the internet and either going to our favorite shopping websites and just mindlessly putting things in our carts, or consuming a lot of content that influences us to buy things that we maybe hadn't budgeted for. So I'm going to put my budget together for December with that in mind, with the fact that I still have holiday presents to buy, and with the idea that I will be spending more time indoors. I will have time off from work, and I may need something of a slush fund to get me through the month just in case I am tempted. So every month I print out a few different sheets to do my budget. And I'll start with the November sheets, which we're obviously still in November as I'm filming this because this will be published in November. But just to give you an idea of the process. So it starts with the budget overview, and that is kind of the master plan for what's going to come in and what's going to go out, and how I plan to stay within the cash flow limits that I have by income. The next thing that I print out is a cash flow tracker. And this is basically everything that comes in and out of my checking account, similar to a check register. But instead of keeping this with me, I just have this here and I reconcile about every week. I don't really have all that many transactions going on in my checking account. Here you can see this is current through about the middle of the month, and there's been, I don't know, maybe 10 or 12 transactions. So there isn't a lot going on there, but I just want to make sure that I'm keeping an eye on my bank account so that if anything strange does happen, I catch it before it gets too late. The next document that I have is an expense tracker. Now, my goal in November was to keep this to a single page, and I'm not going to meet that. In fact, I've already printed out a second page that is clean for me to use once this one fills up. There was an emergency situation this month, and there were things that I bought for gifts that I wouldn't buy in a normal month. So my goal is to keep it to one page, but we'll see if I can do any better in December. Anyway, that's another thing that gets printed out. Then we have the cash allocation, and the cash allocation is simply where I'm allocating the money that I'm assigning to my wallet and to my stockpiles. Some people call stockpiles sinking funds, but I've always thought of them as stockpiles. They're piles of cash that I'm accumulating for a specific purpose. So with the wallet, it's pretty consistent. Every week I take $100 out of the bank, and that is money that I keep in cash for fun and miscellaneous, personal spending, anything like that. And then I also allocate $100 out of what is in my bank account toward groceries and personal care items and things like that. I don't segment it just because for me it's not that important to do that. I'm a household of one, and it's roughly the same amount every week. So I just keep it as kind of a generalized groceries. Now, I don't spend out of my bank account. I use credit cards for a couple of reasons. Number one, for the purchase protection, and number two, because they offer rewards. And I'm taking advantage of those rewards because I don't carry any consumer debt. In fact, I think the average credit card balance or revolving credit amount in the United States right now is something like $8,000. And I don't have any debt, so that means that somebody else has my share of the debt. Somebody else is carrying around that $8,000 plus their own $8,000. And that is a heavy burden to bear. I've been there. I don't wish it on anybody. But because I don't carry any debt and I pay off the credit card balance every month, I'm more comfortable with using those credit cards for my day-to-day spending rather than using a debit card or carrying more cash with me. So for November, I had one stockpile for Black Friday. I haven't yet decided if I'm going to deplete that, if I'm going to reassign it or what have you, but it's still there. And then the month-end review. Now, again, because we're still in November, I haven't yet started filling this out other than what is the plan from the monthly budget overview, which I knew at the start of the month. So once this month ends, I will fill it in. Now, the way that I budget is that for every, and I'll flip back to the budget overview here, for every Friday in the month is when I take out the money that I keep in cash. So I took out $100 on the 1st and on the 8th and on the 15th and on the 22nd, and I will again on the 29th. It says 200 here because, again, I'm keeping $100 of what's in my checking account set aside for credit card spending, basically, groceries, personal care items, things like that. So because there are 5 Fridays in November, some of this spending is going to spill over into December. When I get to the December budget, I'll show that I'm actually starting for bills and things like that on the 1st. So even though these are in the same week as the week of the 29th, they are going to be tracked separately. But cash spending, I can't just cut it off in the middle of the week and say, okay, out of the $200, well, there were 4 days in November and 3 days in December, or whatever it ends up working out to be, and splitting that up, it's just not worth the effort. So I keep the whole week for that in the month where the Friday is. And then in December, there will be 4 Fridays. So I'm going to skip ahead now to the December sheets because I've already printed those and started filling them out. Looks a lot similar to what I did for November. So just peel this off. Income is going to be the same, or at least I'm projecting it to be the same. I always sandbag myself a little bit. The paychecks are a little bit higher than this, but I just plan on the $3,000, and anything that's left over will cover maybe an unexpected overage or an unexpected expense, or it builds up my cash reserves in my checking account, which is always a good thing to have. Bills, these are exactly the same as in November. Some of the numbers are a little bit different. For example, I already know what my water, sewer, garbage bill is going to be, so I filled that in here. That's different. Same with the electricity bill, which I just got the other day. So that one, because I had the figure, I plopped it in. Everything else is pretty much the same as it always is. Orca, which is the local transit pass or transit card, that will be $50 this month because that's how much I spend. Every month I reset to $100. And so this month I anticipate I'll need about $50. I don't think I'm going to be going too many places this week because I have the week off from work. And then over to the wallet section. So there is $200 a week, 100 of it in cash, 100 of it I keep in the bank. Stockpiles, I have one on the 1st for $200. That is any last minute holiday spending, shipping costs, anything like that that I will incur to make the holidays bright for those that I care about. Savings and extra debt, this is kind of the whopper. So if you've been following along, then you'll know that because we had a storm in November, a bad storm, and I evacuated, I ended up staying in a hotel for 3 nights and incurring a lot of additional expenses that I hadn't planned on. Threw away all of the food that was in my fridge and my freezer. And so that caused me to not make a Roth IRA contribution for November, which I had planned on. So I had, in fact, sent the money over to my brokerage, and before committing it to the IRA, where I would have had to, if I'd done that, I would have had to. If I took it back out, then I would have lost that capacity in my IRA for the year. So luckily, I was able to withdraw it from my cash account and the brokerage back into my checking account. And I will use some of that money to pay off the bills that came in as part of the emergency. But I'm really hoping that I can get close to making the full contribution for my 2024 Roth IRA in December. I have $2,000 left to go. It was going to be $1,100, but again, I pulled the $900 from November back. So I'm hoping that I will be able to put $1,800 into the Roth in December. That will still leave me short, but the good news with the Roth IRA is that you can make contributions for the previous year up until tax day of the following year. So if tax day is April 15th, 2025, you can still contribute to your 2024 Roth IRA up to that date. So I am going to get out the calculator. I'll total these up, and then we'll see what it's looking like for the rest of December. This first section, I don't really need a calculator for. We're looking at about $6,100 worth of income. And I probably shouldn't have put this in the binder before I did this because I'm left-handed, but that's okay. And then the bills, I am just going to total those up real quick, and we'll see what those come out to. Okay, so we've got $3,087.59. When I was inputting all of these numbers, I thought, maybe I should just start rounding because I don't really like dealing with the pennies, the cents on my budget. This is the only section of the budget where I do it, other than in the expenses where it's money that I've actually spent. So I'm curious if anyone else rounds or if you go down to the last penny. So for now, I'm going to leave it here, but maybe next year that's something that I will consider doing differently. Again, over here for the wallet, I probably don't need a calculator. $800 for Fridays in December. Stockpiles, I'm only planning on the $200 for holiday spending, so I'm going to total that. And I'm only planning on $1,800 for the Roth IRA, no other plans here. So now I'm going to fill in all of these sections, and we'll see how I did matching income with expenses, or projected expenses. So 6,100, 3,087. 54, 800, 200, and 1,800. So we'll total those. Oops, that's 59 cents, not 54 cents. There we go. So we're going to add that to 800 plus 200 plus 1,800. Okay, so that's 5,887.59 minus 6,100. So that leaves me with a remainder of $212.41. Now, a lot of people don't like having remainders that large. They like to plan every dollar down to the last penny, and if that works for you, then that's great. You should continue doing that. For me, though, just because I'm still early in my budget journey and I'm still a little nervous from what happened in November because in addition to the storm, I was also overspending every single week. Now, there were good reasons for those overspends. I don't regret that at all. But at the same time, I am not entirely convinced that $200 a week is going to be feasible in the long term. Based on the analysis that I did before I started doing this, it should be. But it just so happens that I've had expenses every single week so far in November that have pushed me over that limit. So I'm keeping this in here in case I do need to go to $250 a week, then there's money to do that. Furthermore, December, like I said at the start of the video, is fraught with pitfalls of holiday spending and travel and weather emergencies. I mean, who knows? We could have another bomb cyclone and I could have to evacuate again. I certainly hope that's not the case, and I do have an emergency fund for that if it should happen again. But for December, I'm more comfortable leaving this with a sizable remainder. So that's the monthly budget overview, and I'll go over some of the other documents that I filled out next. I'll go over these fairly quickly because I did talk about them in the November section of the budget when I was going over what things look like for the current month. So monthly cash flow tracker is basically my check register, more or less, everything that comes in and goes out of my checking account. I do this for two reasons. Number one, because it prompts me to go and look at my checking account and make sure that there aren't any transactions there that I don't recognize or any that don't match what I said I was going to put through the checking account. In other words, if I say I make a credit card payment of $250, that it actually shows up as $250, not $25, not $2,500, but it's the amount that it should have been. The monthly expense tracker is just as it sounds. So everything that I spend that is not cash and is not a bill, so not accounted for in the bill section of my credit card, I put in here. These are transactions that I have put on a credit card, and I will need to repay that credit card at some point during the month or the following month. And I do this to, I guess, keep myself accountable in the sense that If I see that I'm using my credit card a lot and things are really getting out of hand, I know that I need to pull that in to stay on budget or to get back on track with my spending. So I'm also making sure that anything that is on my credit card statements is an expense that I recognize and something that I actually charged. So if there is something that I don't recognize, I will either call the credit card issuer or the 1-800 number that is on the statement. And that doesn't happen all that often, but it has happened in the past. And most of the time when it does happen, it is a transaction that I actually made. I just forgot or I didn't recognize the merchant name. But having a tracker and actually writing those down keeps me accountable. Then we come to the cash allocation. And as I explained earlier, this is just where everything that I'm taking out of my account for my wallet and my stockpiles is going. So for the wallet, I have $100 every week earmarked for groceries and $100 every week earmarked for cash. That cash, as far as I'm concerned, is a sunk cost. Once it's out of my bank account, I no longer, well, I do care where it goes, but at the same time, I'm not going to track it because generally those cash expenditures are things that are entirely discretionary. I rarely spend cash on absolute necessities. But the groceries is just a matter of, okay, this is how much I'm setting aside this week to pay for food and personal care and other essential expenses that are not bills, they're variable. And so I make sure that I have that amount set aside. And then in stockpiles, I have just the one for now. It's Christmas. Next year, as I start working toward other goals, then I will add more stockpiles to this list. But for now, I have just the one. And part of that is because I got such a late start this year with tracking my spending and doing the budgeting. But the other part of it is that I'm really trying to hit that Roth IRA target and fully fund it for the year. So I am single minded in that focus versus saving up for a vacation or for my cross country move or any other long term goals. And then the last document, of course, is the month end review. This is where I look back at the month that was and evaluate, did I stay on track or not? If I did stay on track, how do I make sure that I note down what I did to help me do that again? In other words, help me repeat the process that kept me on track. What were the things that I did that made me more accountable or made me stick to what I had planned to spend versus going off track? If I did go off track, then how do I prevent that from happening in the future? Or what are the things that I need to watch out for? And then anything to remember for this time next year. So, one of the things from November might be, okay, we had this emergency, we had this storm that came out of nowhere. Even though I can't plan for those in the future as far as when they're going to occur and how much it's going to cost me, what did I learn from my experience this time that could help me minimize the impact on my budget in the future? So, those are the documents that I print out every single month. If you're interested in getting these for yourself, they're available in my Etsy shop, either individually or as a bundle, and I'll have a link to that down in the description below. I want to thank you for spending some time with me today, and a special thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed the video, please let me know by hitting the like button. Subscribe if you're new, leave a comment down below, and share with your friends. If you're interested in any of the Ready Budget Go products that I showed in today's video, a link to my Etsy shop is down in the description. Until I see you again next time, take care.